Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of Doctor Who The Space Pirates, which is the last Doctor Who story to have missing episodes. There's only one surviving episode and that's on the Lost in Time box set. That is episode 2, and this is the last time I'm going to flash this one at you guys for an episode review at least. This is the last partly missing story with only 5 episodes missing and 1 surviving. Well, only one surviving, but after this, no more missing stories. The only exception is the unfilmed scenes of Sharda that have been animated for the 2017 release. But those aren't missing. They were unfilmed, so technically the story was unfinished rather than missing. So Space Pirates is the last partly missing Doctor Who story. And what a whimper to end such a marathon task on that I had to do with the missing episodes marathon I did last May and June. I did the reconstructions of missing episodes with the surviving episodes for the ones that had them. And what a whimper we ended on, and also what a whimper the Lost in Time box set ends on, and what a whimper Patrick Troughton's penultimate story is. The Space Pirates is my least favourite Doctor Who story of all time. And I'm not just talking, this is my least favourite story at present in the universe. There's going to be worse data to come. No, literally, there is nothing worse than this story, in my opinion. Hellbent in 2015, Series 9, almost comes close. But I think every single episode of this story is worse. And before this rewatch, I would have said 4, 5 and 6 might have been a bit better. But after rewatching this, I'm saying no, 4, 5, 6, they're worse than Hellbent. I would have said they were better a day or 2 ago at time of recording, but yeah, actually yesterday I would have said 4, 5 and 6, they're better than Hellbent. But now, no, they're worse. Much worse, but even worse than those, 1, 2 and 3. I thought 2 was, when I originally watched it on Lost in Time, I thought that was the worst of all time, but I wasn't going to put down the entire story based on one episode, unless it's a 1 episode story. So, as it's a 6-part, I wasn't going to put the story down based on 1 episode. Based on 3 episodes, yes, I can. Based on all 6, massively. Episodes 1 and 3 were even worse on the first viewing, and now I can safely say that I just can't. I can't like this story. Not all 6 episodes are just bad. They're awful. So yeah, they're the worst 6 episodes of all time, with Hellbent coming a very close 7th. As for story, it is easily the worst of all time, with Hellbent coming a close 2nd, probably. I've had many least favourites in my time, but there's only one that I've actually hated more rewatching. Actually, that's not completely true, but one that I don't think is going to ever have a chance of redemption, and that's this story. Every other one, I think, has a redemption chance. But this story, no chance. This story sucks. For starters, the supporting characters suck. Both good and bad. The good people, they're boring. We spend way too much time with them doing their own thing, and not enough with the Doctor. Yeah, they can do their own thing, but it does get a bit boring when we keep cutting back to them when our main characters are following the plot, and it's not like they interact with them that much. I think the most is the Doctor on the radio, and they might have heard that. Now, it's okay for them to have their own thing for a little bit of a time, for a while, but 6 episodes? Not really. The villains are shit. I hate Cavan. I think he's awful, and I don't think his grumpy, angry attitude doesn't work. His associate is pretty weak as well. He doesn't really do that much. I suppose you could call her a villain, but Madelyne, Madelyne's alright. She's not a 100% villain. She's she's okay character, I'll give her that. There's a bit of a development later on in the story. Milo Clancy, an ally, is, well, my friend Mr. TARDIS 11, aka Ollie Pajak, described him as the Jar Jar Binks of Doctor Who in a conversation we had, and I can clearly see why. Whilst I hate other characters in this story slightly more, I can see where he's coming from, and to be honest, to a degree, I might agree a little. So yeah, Milo Clancy is the Jar Jar Binks of Doctor Who, at least in this story, anyway. He is annoying. He has this Southern American accent, and it's very annoying. Yeah, there's quite a few accents in the story, a bit like with Moonbase and Seeds of Death. It seems to be, whenever we go to space, they like to do international variation of the stories. But Milo Clancy is just fucking annoying. Good God, I'd replace him with any black character from any era of the show, and he would immediately have a much better character. Hey, he's from the South of America during a period of time, well, when the story was made, when the blacks were segregated, so that's why I asked for them in particular. But in fairness, anyone would be better than Milo Clancy, apart from Cavan. Cavan I can't stand. I really can't stand Cavan. Even when he's at his quiet, when he's calm, when he's mellow, or not mellow, when he's not shouting, not being angry or being rough. And the space pirates, they're a little bit too rough without needing to. Context, guys, context. The space Orc, I can't remember. Space Orc Corp. They're a shoot first, ask questions later company, organisation. I guess so. It's the pirates. The Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe don't actually do that much until maybe the second half of the story to actually influence the plot. There's very little to them, and part 2 it just sees them trapped in a room. Yeah, those who watch the episode on this box set will know that all the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe do in part 2 is just being trapped in a bloody room and just make things worse for themselves, really. Part 1 isn't really any better, but the TARDIS doesn't land until, I was looking at the time, and it was how long we were into the episode. It was about nearly 15 minutes when the TARDIS first arrived, and about 30 seconds later, so 15 minutes, 25 seconds, when the characters first appeared. So, yeah, I think this must be the longest time it's taken for any Doctor or Companion to appear in the episode. Even in Doctor Light or Companion Light stories, unless they aren't there one at all, like in Mission to the Unknown, or in the Companion's case in Deadly Assassin. But if they do make a slight appearance, it will still be usually within the first 10 minutes. As seen in Love and Monsters, Blink, Turn Left, Heaven Sent, there will usually be some sort of reminder within the first 10 minutes. I suppose actually Heaven Sent, it might be a little bit later on, but considering the focus is on the Doctor in that story, that's not a big deal. Plus, Clara has more influence in that later scenes of that episode than the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe do in the first 2 of this story. Heaven Sent is awesome. Hellbent ruins it, but Heaven Sent is awesome. The music in this story sounds a bit like that wailing music from the Ice Warriors, especially when it's played at the start of each episode when the titles come up. By the way, the titles in part 1, when it reveals the title of the story, right in the episode, it comes after the first scene for some reason. So I don't know why they couldn't do it before the first scene played out. Like they were embarrassed to tell us which story and who was writing it and what episode it was. But the music sounds like that wailing one from the Ice Warriors, but not as bad. However, it's repeated a little bit more. I mean, the Ice Warriors one, it might have been done quite quite often as well, but I can't remember. I tried to omit that music out of my mind. But it feels like the music sounds like a mix of that and something you might get from the new series with the... I'm sorry, I can't do high pitch. But it's also played every time the Space Corps, or at least the Space Corps ships, make an appearance when they're not focusing the episode on them, which is usually in the second half. The not being focused on, the focus on is usually in the first half, especially episodes 1 and 2, when the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe don't turn up until nearly 3/5 into the first episode. And production values, yeah, it's alright. I mean, it's nothing more it's not that much more spectacular than previous stories. Yeah, even some really good set design models don't raise an impression with me, because everything else is just sucking. It's just business as usual, but with an awful script. Basically, with a good script, I can praise the production design. I can praise the visual and special effects. But with a shit story and with business as usual, other times they could be the standouts, like with Ice Warriors. They had some pretty nice sets there a few times, and they tried to make it look pretty interesting. The Romans, they made a very good job convincing me it was ancient Rome that they were in, despite being on a BBC television budget. Even Dominators had some nice sets. But because business as usual here, it doesn't really catch my eyes as much as those other times, or when it's good, really great set design. It's not really bad production values, it's just that I don't care for it, because the story isn't that great, and the production is basically business as usual, as opposed to, let's try and make this story look as good as we can, as opposed, it's just like, let's try and make this story look, the stories look, as opposed to let's try and make the story look as good as it can, depending on what the story actually is. And it just doesn't work. Next time they're going to try a bit harder for the next story, because it's 10 parts and it's going to be an epic and there's going to be more location stuff. But it just doesn't work here, and I don't think there's much location. I think maybe in the caves. There's also this guy in part 1 that they find, the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe find in part 4, but then at the end of the episode he's killed. So what was the point of him? If you're just going to literally kill him off after an episode. Well, he was in 2 episodes, but you had 2 episodes in between where we didn't know what happened to him. So if you're going to kidnap him, leave him for 2 episodes, and then come back to him in another, and then at the end of that one, just kill him. What's the point? At least in Seeds of Death, they had this character who was killed off a bit too early. I complained about this at the end of part 4, start of part 5. But he was in the other episodes leading up to his death, so we actually had some more time with him. There was actually a point the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe were on their way to help him. He just died on the way to stopping the Ice Warriors. This guy just gets killed off just because. There's a difference between killing off characters that we emotionally get invested with and just killing off characters. Even Seeds of Death guy, I felt more stuff for than this guy, just because we had a bit more time with him. He's kind of in that middle ground, I suppose. But we had enough time for him to be sorry to see him go. And the same with the guy from Fury from the Deep. I actually thought he was a very good character, but he died / got kidnapped in start of part 4, start of part 5. So went a bit too early, and I didn't really know if he survived or got out of there or not. I'm not sure about that one. It was the Dutch guy. So yes, this character, just what was the point of him if you're just going to flipping kill him off after only having 2 episodes of him and not really doing much in those 2 episodes at all, to be honest. Jesus flipping Christ. And we get introduced to another character, Madeline's father, who Kevin kidnapped and made it look like he had died. Yeah, he gets introduced in part 5, and it's got to deal with him. I suppose this is what convinces Madeline to join the good side, alongside the fact that Kevin likes killing people, she doesn't. But and I suppose this does help develop her character. Obviously, that she does have some slight development in the second half, especially in the last 2 episodes. But it just doesn't gel very well. I suppose it's a nice twist, but considering what we've been having up to, I really couldn't care anymore. I'm getting fed up with this story. I got more fed up with it than the Dominators. I just wanted it to end. And this was, and this is during those episodes I thought were actually okay. Last time I saw them, 4, 5, and 6, I thought they were actually okay, not terrible. Still bad. It's still a terribly low story, worst of all time in my opinion. But these episodes were the more redeeming quality of the story, at least. Now there is little to redeem this story. I would say the redemption would be the acting from our main leads, especially Wendy Padbury at the end of part 2. She's very great when Jamie is supposedly killed, and she has a go at Clancy for it, as he's the one who stunned him. Whoops. So good acting from our three leads, and I think Madeline gets a little bit of development. So compared to everybody else in this story, that's something. But the negatives outweigh the positives. Kevin is an awful villain, well, person as well, but I think that's the point. But he's an awful villain. Clancy's an awful ally. There's too much time spent on the Space Corp when we need more on the main characters or side characters. Heck, even maybe the fucking villains. As much as I hated them, maybe we could get a bit more, character development instead of them just being, space pirates, they're evil. Or maybe Madeline, we could add a bit more character development with her as well. So her moral side to this, maybe the twist could have been a halfway point of the story, and she was a secret villain. However, later on during the second half, she started to develop more of a conscience, more than we get. I mean, that is something I'll say for this story that is a positive. She does develop a little bit more, and I think I have mentioned it. But considering what's been going on throughout the rest of the episode, this is just awful. This is just so awful. And not even a pretty good reconstructions can save it. So, in the end, the Space Pirates, I have to be brutal with this story because I had an awful time with it. The Space Pirates, I am going to give a 1 out of 10. Right. 1. No way is it getting any higher. It was 2, but then I got fed up with the second half of the story as well as the first, so it went down. That second half would have made it a 2, had it a 2, but when I got, as I mentioned, it wasn't enjoyable, it wasn't fun. It was a big letdown, so that's why it's been lowered to 1. It's basically Whatever Happened to Susan of the actual show. And even Whatever Happened to Susan, I later found out it was a parody. Still got really pissed off about it, though. Still really hated the continuity errors. But here, I just got fucking pissed at the story. I can't stand this story. That's it. Never again. Never. This is the one last time. I had to sit through the awful episode 2 when I watched this box set. Had to sit through the reconstruction. I decided to reconstruct when I watched the reconstructions last year. I sat through 3 god-awful episodes, including this one again, the surviving episode again, and 3 redeemable but still pretty bad episodes. And then when I rewatched the story, those 3 pretty bad episodes that still were a little bit redemptionist also turned out to be fucking shit, just like the other 3 episodes. So, never again. Never going near this story again unless I have to. Like this time. This time I had to. I suppose the reconstructions I had to. But they were still choice. I still had a say in the matter. But from this point onwards, I will only do it if I need to do it. And I will choose to need to do it. But it is strictly if I need to watch this story for one reason or another. This story is fucking shit. I cannot stress this enough. Oh, there's other awful stories, past and future, but this one just super, super terrible. Oh, there's other ones do other things terribly, but this one's just no effort, apart from in the acting and some of the production design. That's it. I am done with this story. I can't take it anymore. And you don't know what? I was going to do a sketch about how I would be completely done with the show after the next story, after Patrick Troughton's last one, and just show me, another me would show me that there's so much good to come with the remaining Doctors. Yes, some god-awful stuff as well, but some god-amazing stuff as well. But you know what? This story doesn't deserve such a sketch, so I'm just going to say that. But yeah, there will be amazing stuff after the Patrick Troughton era is over. There will also be some terrible stuff, and like I mentioned, Hellbent is very close to being the next worst. It would be the next worst, and is a very close competitor. But despite that, but at least that story also had impressive set design and visual effects. It didn't feel like business as usual. It did try and feel like it was a big doo-doo, but still big. This one is a big doo-doo with that was just business as usual. So, you know, just your average going to the toilet whilst hell-bent. It felt like it was going to... You felt like you had something nice, and then you went to the loo just afterwards, and you just realised everything had went through the system. It's basically Heaven Sent and Hell-Bent in a nutshell, basically. But you were expecting something nice, instead of having to rush upstairs or down the corridor, depending on where you live, and use the toilet. This time round, just use the toilet. There's no nice meal to go with it beforehand or afterwards, unless you're a War Games fan, in which case you've got a treat coming up afterwards. And to be honest, after this story, the War Games will be something that will fix the era. But I think after this story, the show, even the War Games, which I know a lot of people love. I'm not the biggest fan of the War Games, but maybe a rewatch will change my mind. Maybe I'll like it a bit more. I do like it. I don't hate it. I find it better than Genesis of the Daleks. Well, apart from the last two episodes of that story. Although these last two episodes also are pretty brilliant as well. Pretty amazing. But anyway, so after a rewatch, maybe my opinion will go up on it. But, you know, it's nowhere near as bad as this story. At all, not at all. But despite that, the show's not really going to be fixed until Robert Holmes' third Doctor Who script. Yeah, like Steve Thompson, after 2 tries, he wouldn't really be completely certain, especially with Steve Thompson, but maybe a third time round would improve, and indeed for both of them it would, although with Thompson he did get some help from Stephen Moffat, so yeah. But with Robert Holmes this time round, what helps him on his third script is that he brings in a monster that will become a series classic, as opposed to Crotons, which are just well known, and the Space Pirates were just fucking awful. Now, Robert Holmes would return with the story after the War Games, which is John Pertwee's first story, Spearhead from Space. And my goodness, after this, I can't wait for John Pertwee. I do consider Troughton a better Doctor. I like him more, but I can't wait for Pertwee's era now after this shit and some of the terrible boringness we've had to go through in the Troughton era. I was actually looking forward to Troughton's era after getting a bit fed up with Hartnell's, so I'm probably going to be looking forward to each new Doctor's eras after getting a bit fed up of the current ones. But in this case, I think Pertwee's era is going to fix a lot of the problems that this story has caused. The problems the story has caused is just existing, and so after that, Pertwee, just give me Pertwee. I'll watch Patrick Troughton's last story, and then finally we'll move on. We'll be able to move on away from this piece of shit. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for Patrick Troughton's final story, The War Games, which I will say, like William Hartnell, he manages to go on a much better note than his penultimate story was. Okay, And I have to say, John Pertwee does the same thing at the end of his season, so his tenure. So that seems to be a pattern with these earlier Doctors. Oh well. Anyway, that's it from me. See you next time for the War Games. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Or production values, this story, that's why. Fuck me. So that's it, thank you from me. Excuse me.